The Mike Haridopolos Show is sponsored in part by Appliance Direct, Duke Spine Institute, Great Scott Productions, M.H. Williams Construction Group, and SpaceCoastDaily.com.
Hello and welcome to the Mike Haridopolos Show. Today we're in South Florida talking with football legend Bob Griese, Hall of Famer, Purdue quarterback, Miami Dolphins, and of course the voice of college football for over 30 years. Today we're going to talk about his life in college and the pro life and his opinion on modern NFL football. It should be an exciting time as we address the future of the sport and, more importantly, going back in time and learning about the 1973 undefeated Dolphins, among other things. In fact, one of the first books I ever got from my dad is this book right here. It's a story of the 1971 NFL season, the first year the Miami Dolphins made the Super Bowl, and the fact that now I have the opportunity to sit down with the quarterback of that very team who went to the Super Bowl and later won 2 Super Bowls is incredible for me. When we return, we'll be here with Bob Griese, Hall of Fame quarterback. But until then, let's hear from our sponsors, the people who make this show possible, right here on Space Coast Daily.
Do you have agonizing back pain? Considering back surgery, fusion, discectomy, or decompression? Traditional open back surgery requires large incisions, screws, and metal hardware, long hospital stays, and months of therapy. There is a safer, more natural solution. With only a 1/4-inch incision, Duke Laser Disc Repair uses state-of-the-art precise laser technology. So as early as the next day, you can be driving and back to your life. Contact Duke Spine Institute today and get back in motion.
I love appliances. Appliance Direct. The biggest Maytag washer ever. 21 pairs of jeans. That's all of them. 21 bath towels. That's all of them. It's huge. And the dryer is certified to sanitize children's toys. Appliance Direct. Over $200 below what wacky new retailers can advertise. The Maytag 980 with a power wash. Appliance Direct. Thank you.
Well, Bob, thank you very much for joining us. It's an honor for us to be here and tell us a little about pro football, college football, and of course your after football activities.
First I gotta ask you, who's your favorite pro football team?
Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, sure.
It was the Dallas Cowboys.
Who's your favorite college team?
Arkansas Razorbacks.
Couldn't get into Purdue, huh?
Couldn't get into Purdue. A good buddy of mine actually went to Purdue, played tennis for them, and he's transferred over to my college, Stetson University, after his junior year. But you guys are the engineers.
We are.
Yeah.
I was one level below that. I majored in industrial management, which is business. So, and then was drafted by the Dolphins. Played 15 years with the Dolphins. Went right into broadcasting after I finished playing for 30 years. Worked with Keith Jackson and Brad Nessler and some others. So that's, 45 years. And still haven't used my industrial management business degree from Purdue, although I have, I guess, in some ways.
Well, it's great that you're here. And, you know, a lot of people are talking about multi-sport stars. And in my generation, it was Bo Jackson. At Purdue, you lettered in baseball, football, and basketball. Tell us about how you managed those 3 sports.
We got to clean that up a little bit. I was growing up in Evansville. I was a really a better baseball player than I was anything else. Mm-hmm. Basketball was my second love because in the state of Indiana, basketball is king, and then football was. Just something that I did because everybody else was doing it. When I went to high school, we went to a brand new high school, Catholic high school that was just opening in Evansville. And so everybody went out, and the coach, who had been a defensive lineman the year before at Evansville College, he was the head coach now of our new Rex Mundi High School. So he asked me, he said, what first day? He had, what position do you play? And I said, I don't know. I've never played organized football. They didn't have pee-wee leagues back then. I said, I don't know. I kind of like to catch the ball. He said, all right, run at wide receiver. So we ran that play, and we came back, and I didn't catch, they didn't throw the ball to me or anything. So he comes back, he says, why don't you take the next one at quarterback? I think he had read in the papers where in baseball I had thrown some no-hitters at various levels. I had thrown no-hitters. So that's how I got to quarterback. He said, knew I could throw the ball, so.
And there it went. Now, how did you make that choice when you got to Purdue? Did you just realize that you were naturally a little stronger in football and you chose that route? Because I think you're 12-1 one of your years at Purdue pitching.
Well, you know, so I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school.
Sure.
And did well in all three, but I only played football and basketball at Purdue. I never played baseball, although, you know, I wasn't a highly recruited guy. There was only two teams that recruited me, two schools. That was Purdue and Indiana. And so I went to Purdue, and when the interview with the coach when I was recruiting and being recruited, Jack Molenkoff, the head coach, said, we'd like to have you come and all that other thing. And I said, all right, coach. I said, one thing I want to ask you. I said, I'd like to play baseball. I'd like to be able to play baseball in the spring. Of course, they have spring football practice.
Yeah.
And you could do both.
Yeah.
So he said, oh, sure, you can do that, you know. Thought it would never come up.
Yeah.
So my freshman year, when we got to my freshman spring, back then freshmen weren't eligible to play. So when we got to in April, so I talked to the coach, and I said, Coach, I want to go back and I want to play baseball in the spring. You said you'd play. And he said, damn it, Griese. He says, you can play baseball, but there's one thing for sure. You won't be the starting quarterback in the fall on the football team if you play in baseball in the spring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well.
There's your choice.
So that was the end
of
that. And I did have a chance to sign with the Baltimore Orioles and play baseball. I was pitching that summer, the previous summer before I went to Purdue. I was pitching in the American Legion World Series in Keene, New Hampshire, and a scout came up to me and says, well, I want to sign you. And I said, no, I'm going to Purdue and get an education.
Good for you.
So.
And the rest is history.
And there you go.
Well, so you obviously incredible career, finished second in the Heisman in your senior year. But one of the first times we actually had the opportunity to sit and talk, you talked about draft day. And right now it is such a big deal with the NFL draft and everything going on. Walk us through your draft day after your senior year at Purdue.
Well, first of all, nobody knew when the draft was going to be. We're talking about 1967, the spring of 1967. Nobody knew when the draft was. It wasn't on TV. It wasn't in New York. Everybody didn't go to New York. They just did it by phone. All the teams at that time, now there's 32 teams. Back then there may have been 26, 28. So they were all hooked up on conference calls into the New York office. So nobody knew who was drafted by whom. So I was going over to the athletic building. I don't know, it was the day after, maybe 2 days after, maybe 3 days after, and I was passing my quarterback coach, Bob Griese, in the hallway. And he said, okay, congratulations there, young man. You were drafted by the Dolphins in the first round.
That was it.
Yeah. He just kept walking, and I just kept walking. I said, what does that mean, you know? Because I was ready to interview in the spring of my senior year to get a job. Yeah. You know, I majored in industrial management, and I was going to go working for, you know, Johnson & Johnson or Procter & Gamble or, you know, somebody.
Yeah.
And so everybody said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I guess I'll go down there and play with the Dolphins for a couple of years. And then when that's over with, I'll get on with my life's work.
Yeah.
Well, 15 years later, I went into broadcasting.
Exactly.
And like I said, you know, I never really went back to work for those companies.
Well, that is a remarkable story, just especially with the conflict and the contrast with today. So your first couple of years in Miami, not bad stats. You're very popular on the team, but the team success wasn't there. Walk us through I read through the book, what Don Shula and you were able to create with that chemistry to turn the team around so quickly. The first year you guys are right in the playoffs.
Well, first of all, the Dolphins started in '67. I wasn't here then. I mean in '66. It started in '66. I came in '67. We lost the first 3 years I was here. I mean, we lost big time. We were an expansion team, and we may have won 2 or 3 games a year. In '69, I think we were 3-10-1.
That's right.
Before Shula came. Shula came in 1970. And so the first year Shula came, we were 10-4.
That's right.
So when he gets a little cranky and a little cocky, I kind of set him in his place, and I said, yeah. He says, it wasn't anything you did. I said, those players were already on the team, and you just moved them around a little bit. Says it wasn't any of your great coaching. It was just the players were there. I mean, Stanfield was there, Zonka was there, Kick, Mercury was there. Now, he did bring in a few guys. He brought in Warfield and Bonacani. But we have a lot of fun with that.
Well, and beyond that fun, was it his discipline? Was it the respect you all had from coming from the Colts and having all that success? What was that combination you all were able to work out?
Well, as soon as he got there, everything changed. The locker room changed. The meetings changed. The on-field preparation changed. The practices changed. And right from the start, you could just tell this guy knows what he's talking about, knows how he's going to get it done. I knew when I first got to the Dolphins, George Allen was the head coach. George Wilson was the head coach. And George had a wonderful career, a lot of success as a player and a coach. But Joe Robbie, the owner of the Dolphins, had hired him. And George, I don't think really wanted the job, but he came down anyway just to have some fun and brought a bunch of his coaching buddies. And so they were having some fun. But when Shula came, the fun went out the back window, and it was serious because everything we did, the players could see it was for a purpose.
And you first 2 years, incredible success. You go 10-4. Next season, you make it to the Super Bowl. So what was that? What happened this summer between that tough loss to Dallas and the next year when you run that perfect season? Were there any other changes, or was it just a natural progression of where the team was going?
Yeah. 3 of the first 4 years of Shula, we were in the Super Bowl. 2 of those years, first 4 years, we won the Super Bowl. And one of those years, we were the only undefeated team that has ever played. That's right. In the NFL, going back 45 years and then going forward 40 or 45 years. So anyway, he made an impact pretty quickly. Yeah. After we lost, we were in the Super Bowl, and back then I think this was Super Bowl VI, and there were two weeks between your championship game and the Super Bowl. So a lot of people were just getting adjusted to how to practice. Where do you go? Do you go to the site 2 weeks? Go to 1 week? Or what do? You got to do all these interviews. So anyway, we got beat handily by the Cowboys. And so the following, first of all, in the locker room after that defeat, Coach Shula set the template for the following year by saying, we're going to have to work all season next year. We're going to work just to get back to where we were 3 hours ago. So we kind of set that right there and saying, all right, we don't want to take any chance of losing next year and not getting back. And people say, did you know you were going undefeated? Did you expect to go undefeated? No, we just wanted to win that game so we could get in the playoffs, And then the next game was, all right, we don't want to win. And then when we got to be 10-0, everybody says, "What were you thinking about going undefeated?" No, we weren't thinking about going undefeated. We were just thinking about winning that game so Shula wouldn't be on our butts,
Yeah.
you know. But he was good. He was the reason.
And during that season, we all went undefeated. You suffered a major injury, and you worked through it. I read through the book about all the extra work you put in, and then came in late towards the season. The championship game, I guess you came in the second half and rallied the team to the big win. How tough was it to be on the sidelines and not be able to get in there and do your part?
Well, it was tough. You know, I broke my leg and dislocated my ankle in the 5th game against San Diego. Coach Shula, coming from Baltimore, had Earl Morrall as his backup quarterback to Johnny Unitas in Baltimore, and when he came to the Dolphins, Earl was available.
Yeah.
So he brought Earl with him, and there he goes. Now your backup quarterback has to play, and Earl goes in and wins the next 10 or 11 games. I guess 8 or 9 games, whatever it was. Then we got in the playoffs, and I'm ready to play. I'm ready to play about the 13th or 14th game. There were 14 games back then, regular season, unlike today. So I'm ready to go, but Earl's going good, so he plays into the playoff. In the championship game in Pittsburgh, the offense is struggling a little bit. Coach Shula sees how I've been practicing, knows I'm ready. Earl, he says, I'm going to make a change at halftime. So I'm going to make a change at halftime. Earl says, all right. He says, I don't agree with it, but for the team, I'll go along with it, and whatever you say, I'll go with you. So we win that game, and now he's got to decide who to start in the Super Bowl. Well, I get to start. Bottom line, Earl did a great job. Coach Shula did a great job handling it. There would have been no undefeated season without Earl Morrall and what he did for that team.
Well, it's a really interesting story. And then the next year, you guys you lost a couple of games the next year, but from the book, you felt like you had a more solid team and really just roll through and take on a tough Minnesota team in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, 17-0 in '72, and we went 15-2. I think 15-2. Lost 2 regular season games, like you said. Probably had a better team in '73 than we had the year before when we went undefeated. But that's how tough it is to go undefeated. And you ask, will another team do it? I don't know. Probably, you never say never. But, if they do, we'll give them a call and a handshake and say, welcome to the mountaintop.
There you go. Well, after that big win, the WFL comes along and really puts a hole in the team. You lose Zonka, Kick, Warfield. What plays out next? I mean, what was your thought process after that season's over? Because you never go back to the Super Bowl. How frustrating was it with the loss of those good players? And of course, you suffered a few injuries over the next few seasons as well.
Yeah, it was tough. Of course, you lose players, whether you lose them to another team, whether you lose them to injury, you don't have them that year, but to have 3 of your best players all leave, that was tough. We never were back to that level where we went back to a Super Bowl again. We did get Zonka back later on because that World Football League thing didn't work out. And so when they came back, Warfield went to Cleveland, Zonka went to the Giants, and I think Kick went to Denver. But anyway, that kind of stopped us right there.
Well, as you're starting to wind down your career, you're going to make a big decision. When I read through the books and when I was a young person, I thought you'd go into coaching. You were known as the thinking man's quarterback. What made you choose the broadcast booth versus going into the coaching realm?
My kids. You ever seen the life of a football coach? They get there early in the morning, and they stay all day, and they leave late at night. I had 3 sons. When do you see your kids? When do you see your wife? The broadcasting thing, I didn't have to be at practice all week. I can be with my family all week, and then I fly out and do a game, and I come back. So that was basically what it was. I did coach 1 year with Coach Shula. I had a guaranteed contract back then, which there weren't many around. And so I got hurt in 1980 was my last year, hurt my shoulder. And surgery was the only way to do it. They didn't have arthroscopic surgery back then, so they had to go in, and the doctor says, if you have the surgery, you won't be able to play that next year. It'll take a year for it to heal. So I said, well, you know, I'll coach.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I enjoyed the preparation and the planning and all that other stuff. I told Coach Shula when I said I'm going to coach, I said, and now I'm talking to him like a coach and not as a player, because, you know, he's as a player, he's up here and you're down here.
Yeah.
As an assistant coach, he's up here and you're a little higher, but, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, I said, Coach, I said, I'm going to come in the morning before the players come in, but after those coaches come in. I ain't going to come in that early, 6 o'clock. And in the evening, I'll stay and leave after the players leave, but I ain't staying as late as those assistant coaches stay.
Sure.
They stayed till 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I did that for 1 year, and I liked it. Like I said, I called the plays, and the planning and the scheming is what I really liked. But then at the end of the year, I walked in, and here's your book, Coach, and enjoyed it. Oh, no, she said, oh, no, you got to do this. You love this work. You're good at this. I said, yeah. I said, I love this, but I love my family more.
Good for you. Good for you.
So that was it.
Well, before we make that transition full over to broadcasting, give the listeners maybe some insight. Who did you like playing against more than any other team? Who maybe your most success, or they lined up well with your talents? Who is the team you really look forward to playing?
Well, the one thing you said there in that question struck a memory, and that was the Buffalo Bills. You know, they were in our division, so you play your division rivals more than anybody else. Patriots were in the division, the Colts were in the division, the Jets were in the division, the Buffalo Bills. We beat, in 1970 to 1980, we beat the Buffalo Bills 20 times in a row.
Oh, wow.
They didn't beat us at Buffalo, and they didn't beat us in Miami. I mean, we had some cold weather up there in Buffalo, and they had some good players. O.J. Simpson,
Of course.
and a bunch of other good players played for Buffalo, but, you know, it was, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the color of the uniforms, if it was a logo on the helmet, but if we fell behind with a minute and a half to go in the game, we knew we were going to go out there and just walk down the field or go down the field and somehow win the game. So Buffalo is who I'd like to play, and who the Raiders and the Black Hole. You know, the Raiders were just, they were the fans. You see the fans with those ugly looking things. So anyway, in '74, when we stopped us from going to the playoffs, we lost a game out there. Kenny Stabler, the left-handed quarterback, was rolling. We were leading the game. He moved him down. We tackled him, and he shot puts the ball into the end zone. And this guy, the running back, had 3 of our guys around him. He wasn't a very good receiver. I don't think he caught 5 or 6 balls all year.
Yeah.
And he catches this one, and that was the end of our playoffs.
Well, I still remember one of the pictures. I think it's even in your cookbook, where one of the Raiders were sacking you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, and they always talk about the Raiders, this hodgepodge. They were exactly as you describe it then, kind of this hodgepodge group that just kind of won on a lot of different elements.
And they almost seem so different from us, because Shula did everything the right way, and we work out and no drinking, get in shape, and all that other stuff. And those Raiders seemed like, you know, they were long hair. Shula wouldn't allow any long hair. Facial hair, no facial hair back then. And they were just the opposite of what we were. And when we beat them, we felt good.
Yeah.
Clean up the whole act.
So it's as advertised in the Raiders. I remember the guys that had the Stickum and the Blitnikoff and the torn up uniforms. It's the good guys, the Dolphins, versus the bad guys in the Raiders.
It's a good way to put it.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break with our guest, Bob Griese. We're going to talk about his broadcast career and being the voice of college football for nearly 3 decades.
I love appliances. Appliance Direct. The biggest Maytag washer ever. 21 pairs of jeans. That's all of them. 21 bath towels. That's all of them. It's huge. And the dryer is certified to sanitize children's toys. Appliance Direct. Over $200 below what wacky new retailers can advertise. The Maytag 980 with a power wash. Appliance Direct. Thank you.
Do you have agonizing back pain? Considering back surgery, fusion, discectomy, or decompression? Traditional open back surgery requires large incisions, screws, and metal hardware, long hospital stays, and months of therapy. There is a safer, more natural solution. With only a 1/4-inch incision, Duke Laser Disc Repair uses state-of-the-art precise laser technology. So as early as the next day, you can be driving and back to your life. Contact Duke Spine Institute today and get back in motion.
Welcome back. We're here with Bob Griese, Hall of Fame quarterback and the voice of college football for so many years. I remember waking up, I was a huge Arkansas Razorback fan when I was a child. That's where we lived, Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I remember the voice of college football, Keith Jackson, Bob Griese. Like one of my favorite games, just whenever you were in Arkansas, it was just an exciting time that we knew we were on national TV, which is a big deal in Arkansas. Tell us about your relationship a little bit with Keith Jackson and how you made that chemistry work and how you maybe, today there's so much information on the internet. What did you all do to gather that information so you can put out that national broadcast every Saturday?
After I stopped playing with the Dolphins, NBC came to me and wanted me to go to work with NBC doing the NFL games, which I did for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And after that time, ABC came and says, we want you to come and do college games and work with Keith Jackson and do the main game every week, do the Rose Bowl. And there wasn't any championship game back then. Mm-hmm. But we would be doing the top game every year and the best postseason game at the time. So I said, boy, I've been in the NFL for 20 years, 15 playing, 5 broadcasting. Mm-hmm. I said, boy, you want me to go to college? I said, you want me to do with Keith Jackson? Yeah, so it was all football. So I did. And so the first game, Keith and I, right now, we got the camera set up. We get into the press box and we just do it before the game starts. And there we are sitting there and he says, okay, Griese, how do you want to do this? I remember that so vividly. I said, whoa, you've been doing this for 30 years, 40, you've been to Olympics, you've done every sport, and you look at me and say, how do I want to do this? So, hey, you just do what you do, and I'll jump in a little bit, And that's the way we did it.
And that was it. And what about the prep work? I mean, how did you get the information? Was the staff compiling that for you? Were you kind of doing your own research during the week? How did that play out?
Well, doing college football is tougher than doing pro football because in pro football, there's 32 teams. In college, there may be 120 teams in Division A that you might do, and the first thing you got to do is learn names and numbers before you learn the stats, and the numbering system is a little bit different in college than it is in pro. Like, for instance, all the linebackers in the pros were 50s. Mm-hmm. Most of them all were 50s. Mm-hmm. Most of the defensive linemen were in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Occasionally. In college, if you got a great guy, a high school #1 player, and he wants to come to Arkansas, he says, hey, I'll come to Arkansas, but I want to wear the number that I wore in high school, which was number 5. Yeah. Doesn't matter that I play defensive tackle or defensive end or linebacker. Sure. So you got all these numbers, first of all, that make it more difficult. But the play-by-play guy has 2 guys on either side of it. Mm-hmm. One is a stat guy. Mm-hmm. The punt. The guy punted the ball. He'll get a number from the stat guy. 49/12. 49-yard punt, 12-yard return.
I see.
Then on the other side, he's got a a guy that points out who the players are. Who made the tackle? Got a chart right next to it. So one stat guy and the guy over here that's going to tell him who made the tackle, who made the catch, whatever. So, and I didn't have any of that. I just did my own thing. I did my work. I knew he was going to call the play, and I was going to say why it worked or why it didn't work.
I see.
And my way of doing it was I kind of got behind the offense. If Arkansas had the ball, I'm rooting for that offense.
I see.
Rooting, If Alabama is playing Arkansas and Alabama has the ball, now I'm trying to get that offense down the field against that other defense, the Arkansas defense. So that was my MO, and that's the way I worked, and it worked for a while. When I finally retired and got with the Dolphins, then I could be a homer. I could say, all right, let's go. And we got to move this ball down there. Attaboy, we scored a touchdown. The Dolphins scored. Except the first 7 games, when I broadcast the radio for the Dolphins, we lost.
Oh, jeez.
I walked out the back of the booth with a heavy heart. I never did that when I was doing college games with Keith Jackson.
Well, you talk about the homer. I guess your ultimate homer you wanted to do was when Brian was in the Rose Bowl. But you handled it in a very professional manner. I remember reading about it in the book and other stories.
Yeah.
How difficult was that doing that Rose Bowl game with your own son, national championship on the line?
Well, Brian went to Michigan. It was in his 5th year. There was some concern about not going back because he'd already graduated. And so anyway, he decided to go back. They had a good team that year. They were ranked number 1 in the country. They were undefeated throughout the season. We did about 4 or 5 of their games because, they were a good draw. They're undefeated. They're number 1 team, Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan State games and all that other stuff. So anyway, we get to the Rose Bowl, and they're playing Washington State.
Yep.
That's Keith's alma mater. Keith Jackson went to Washington State. So now all these media types are asking him how he's going to call a fair game and not favoritism towards Washington State. So I'm gigging him a little bit. So anyway, the game goes well. Michigan wins. Later, there must be about a minute left in the game. Brian had a good game.
You did?
And Keith, he's handed a 3x5, one of these file cards, and he says, "Oh, Nelly, you want to know who the MVP is? I'm standing right next to his proud daddy."
That's great.
Oh, I said, Keith, you better take it from here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk.
That's great. Well, you talk about the games, minus the games you might have done with Brian. What was the most memorable college football game you ever broadcast in your career, and why was it so memorable to you?
Well, it was that one. It was the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
It was the Rose Bowl where Brian won the MVP. They won the national championship. I went back out there a couple of years ago, and Keith Jackson was the MC of the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame luncheon. And they were inducting Bob Griese, and it was the first father and son inductees that had ever been in the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame. So I was in it, and Brian was going in, and Keith was there ushering him in.
Well, that's and with that same thought, I mean, what was your favorite place to announce a game? Is there a stadium that you thought you really wanted to go to, or fans that you really appreciated?
Well, Miami, the Orange Bowl was great.
Yeah.
Michigan, not only because my son was there, because it was Bo Schembechler. A lot of it had to do with the coach, and the coach was there. But I think the Big Ten, we did a lot of games. When I was with Keith, we did a lot of games in L.A. Because USC was really good in the 80s and 90s, and UCLA. So I'd be going across the country, and Keith said, Griese said, bring the sticks. We're going to play the LA Country Club. He belonged to the LA Country Club. So I'd go out early and we'd play that course and then do the game.
And is there a place that you want to mention on camera that maybe wasn't as hospitable a place to announce a football game?
Well, I didn't know, but Keith, he was, we were at Tallahassee, and we all had rental cars. And I was riding with Keith because right after the game, we got to get out and get to the airport because we always have tight connections. So, I mean, everybody knows Keith Jackson. Everywhere we go, everybody, and so we get there early. We get there like 3 hours before the game, and so we always want to get a good parking spot in the parking lot. Well, Keith pulls in across from in Tallahassee, across from the stadium, Florida State, and there was this one old guy. He must have got up on the wrong side of the bed. He was a little cranky. He wasn't very happy, so we pull in, and there's no cars in the parking lot. And so we want to park right next to the exit so we can get out. Well, this guy wasn't going to let. Keith rolled down his window and said, good morning, how you doing? Beautiful day and all that. And guy said, Keith said, we'd like to park right here so we can get out. We're doing the game and all that other stuff. He said, you got to park back there, way back there in the back. So we parked in the back. He said, what did he say? He said, the only reason Sherman didn't burn Tallahassee is because he couldn't find it.
Well, you talk a lot in the book about your son Brian, and you guys spent a lot of time together, and you became, as he put it, best friends, and you put it to the book. How special is it now as you see Brian do the ESPN games? He's really literally following your footsteps. He had a successful pro career, now gone in the broadcast booth. What do you try to work with him on even today as you enjoy that friendship?
Well, what people don't know is that he started a foundation and called it Judy's House. His mother passed away when he was 12. And when he got out to Denver and he was drafted by the Broncos, and after about 3 or 4 years, he started the Judith A. Griese Foundation for breast cancer, the Judith A. Foundation, to help young kids get over the grief of losing a loved one, whether it was a parent, whether it was a brother or a sister. And 12 years, 14 years now, that's been the case, and they've had like, I think 6,000 or 7,000 kids go through that house, Judy's House. They call it Judy's House. So I'm more proud of him for doing that than anything he's done on the practice field.
Well, and it's reading through the book, it's incredible to read about the tight bond that you all shared after that. And I know you lost your father at a young age as well, and that how important that connection is. Do you all still talk a lot about how you do that role now in the announcing booth? What does he come to you and say, Dad, how should I handle this? Or is this something like he did with his football career, kind of did his own way? Yeah,
back when he was still playing with in the NFL, he played for 11 years.
Yeah.
And I was, we'd cross paths somewhere, and I would always, I have this board. I had a blank board, and then I'd put circles, and I'd put names and numbers and color-coded and everything else, put the offense for Miami on the bottom, put the defense for Florida State on the top, and then flip the board over.
I see.
And then it took me 5 or 6 hours a week to put, like Michigan was playing Iowa, and then UCLA was playing. Each week I put this board together, color-coded, all the names and numbers, the stats, the heights, the weights, how many interceptions, how many completions, how many touchdowns, how many this, that. Brian would see that. He said, Dad, come on. You don't need to do all that. You know that stuff. When he retired, and was going to go into broadcasting, the first call he made, he said, "Dad, can I have one of those blank cards that you use? You know how you use those sheets? See, because I have blank ones, and then I just fill in the blanks. You know? So I sent him one of those, and he used that system for about a year or two. Now he's got his own system."
Very good. Well, and you know, so much to talk about today, the Mannings. I mean, clearly your son and yourself had a tremendous success. And how did you, I read a little bit in the book, but maybe you can express to the viewers how you tried to nurture him in his football career as he moved through the process, and but not kind of rely on the idea, oh, it's Bob Griese's son. How did you kind of balance that as being a good dad and not try to push him, but you want him to find that success?
Well, I had 3 sons, and we were always there for him. You know, we didn't take long trips over the weekends. During school time, Judy and I, we didn't leave on. We were there. We raised those kids. So when Brian and Jeff and Scott were young, the routine was you go to school, you stay after school to play whatever sports in season. You know, no one sport.
Yeah.
I played, when I was growing up, I played everything. I played everything. And so whenever they got home from practice, they were tired and take a shower, have dinner, get your homework, go to bed. And that was the routine for all 3 of them. And then when they got a little older in high school, and I said, listen, pick a school that you want to go to and get a good education. You know, you guys aren't going to do what I did. I kind of slipped through the cracks. You know, I went to Purdue and I was a 7th string quarterback and finally got up to the top and played well. Don't plan on doing that. Just pick a college. I've got enough wherewithal that I can send you to a school, the college. You don't need a scholarship. So pick the school you want to go to. So they all did.
Or you were not secretly hoping they'd pick Purdue?
Brian was the only one that was good enough to play at Purdue.
I see.
And Purdue really wanted him, but he said, "Dad," he says, they've probably been the best recruiting me of all the other schools, but he says, "I can't go to Purdue." He says, "If I go there, they'd be always comparing me to what you did back when you were there and all that other stuff."
But he actually walked on to Michigan.
Yeah, he said, Dad? He said, "Dad, what about Michigan?" I said, "Brian, this is late in the recruiting process.
Yeah.
Really late." So I knew the Michigan guys. So you know, Bo Schembechler.
Sure.
And he said, "Well, send me a tape." He said, "We're late in the process. We don't have many scholarships left. We've already given a scholarship to 1 quarterback." So they liked the tapes. You know, he was a good
Great
player.
stats. Yeah.
So anyway, he said, "We like him, but we like him to walk on, and then maybe later on, you know." So Brian said, "Okay." So he walked on, and I think 2 weeks after he was there in summer workout, summer practice, he called and says, "I got a scholarship."
That's wonderful. Okay, good. Well, as we wrap it up, a couple thoughts. The game has changed so radically the last 30 or 40 years, not just the tension put on it, but from your perspective, you've seen it on the field, from the play-by-play booth. What's the biggest change, positive change, that's maybe taken place in that sport over these years you've been involved?
The game is bigger, the players are bigger, they're stronger, and they're faster. Back from when we played, there were no 300-pound offensive linemen. Larry Little was the biggest offensive lineman we had, and he was 265 pounds.
Really?
There weren't 6'5", 6'7", 6'8" guys, offensive linemen. Well, there weren't any of those around. They're bigger, they're stronger, and they're faster, and because they work at it. When we finished the season back then, we would go off and get jobs after December, and we wouldn't see the Dolphins again until June or July. You know, we all went and got our jobs. Now what they do is they have off-season conditioning programs, they have weight training and all this other stuff. The other thing that's changed are the rules. The rules have changed tremendously. Offensive linemen used to have to block like this. Now that's the first thing they move is like this. The defensive backs, when Warfield used to run downfield, he'd run a crossing route, and the strong safety would hit him, knock him off his feet, or throw a cross body block at him. Can't do that now. So the rules have changed. The quarterback, back then, you could hit the quarterback after he threw the ball and say, "Oops, I'm sorry, referee, I won't do that again." and I'm getting up like I just got hit in the head, So the rules have changed. The guys are bigger and stronger and faster. But it's a good game. I enjoy watching. Everybody enjoys the game.
And do you think there's a lot of concern about the head injuries and so forth? I mean, I remember seeing the helmets you all played with. I remember that little...
Yeah, and the suspension inside the helmet. But it was the best available at the time.
Yeah. One thing we haven't asked, what are you doing now? I know you're doing the day-by-day, each game with the Dolphins on the radio. What do you like to do when you're not around football? Something that maybe the viewers would love to hear about what you're doing every day?
Well, I got 3 sons and 7 grandkids, and it's great. Headlights and taillights. It's fun when they come, and it's fun when they go.
Well, and one of the things that we actually, if you don't know, Bob and his wife Shay actually put out a cookbook as well.
Not Bob and Shay. Shay put out a cookbook. I got one recipe in there. It's my world famous Cuban sandwich. A friend of mine, long time ago, when I was first with the Dolphins, after a round of golf, invited me over to his house and showed me how to make his Cuban sandwiches. And I said, "Geez, that's pretty good, So I worked at it, perfected it, and it's pretty good. But after he saw me, putting it in the Miami Herald one time, 10 years later, he says, "I think that's my old recipe that you got in there." I said, "Yeah, it's yours." I said, "I'll give you credit if you want." He said, No.
That's correct. Well, as close, we like to end with kind of a lightning round. Kind of say a name or a team, or you can give me your impressions, and we'll kind of go from there if that's okay. Dallas Cowboys.
Roger Staubach.
Tom Landry.
Dallas Cowboys.
How about your coach, Don Shula?
Class, savior, survivor, good guy.
And John Madden.
John Madden, good guy. He's a lot smarter than he looks.
And I know you have 3 sons, but it seems like you spend a lot of time, especially the similarities. Brian Griese.
More proud of him for what he's doing with Judy's house than anything else. He works hard at it, and he's a good father. All 3 of my sons are good fathers.
Well, we want to close and just say thanks again for taking your valuable time. And, obviously a Hall of Fame quarterback, but as I read through the book and the love you have for your family, and especially with some of the difficulties you faced throughout, and you've been a Hall of Fame father and friend, and we really want to say thanks for taking the time with Space Coast.
We got to say hello to our mutual friend Maury Holsini.
That's right.
He's been dodging me. I want to get him on the golf course, but I think he's he handles the truth a little carelessly when it talks about his handicap. So I'm making the challenge right here that he comes and plays with us in North Carolina this summer.
Let's make that a deal. Thanks so much for your time, Bob. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Today we've been our guest, Bob Griese, Hall of Fame quarterback, and you can see why it's so exciting to have him right here in South Florida. Join us next time on Mike Haridopolos Show.